In reality, only a select few individuals hold the power of influence. Not a pounce over a luxury item never to be owned, but real influence over police, governments, and even clandestine fraternities. My true story is so controversial that I invite you to comment and even question my integrity. Episode 19, The Princess. Now, I had time and space and internet access to review my case, and I wondered how Tom Carr had got away with his abuse of the system, but I'd seen it all before. This was no surprise to me, and rounding up my clients and rounding up the police must have been at the front of the queue, of course, waiting, prompting, poking. Go on, take him out. We've tried and failed, let's try again. I'd had a rest. That's what they gave me, time to think, time to consider. I needed one, I was flat out, you heard it. Rolling over, picking myself up, falling over, kick the shit out. You know, this is the position I'm in. But strangely enough, the prison sentence I got gave me time to chill, reflect, and hopefully come back stronger than ever. Now, I was right to trust in my intuition. And then I took a look at the case papers that I'd accumulated. Natasha's notes from Budworth on the eve of my conviction, the prosecution case, the clerk's notes, the call log, the transcripts, the statements. I did as I had before with my brother's case and decided to administrate. I thought to focus on Iqbal first and try to discover where my boxes of legal papers had ended up to. Clearly, Iqbal hadn't told the whole truth because he was uncovered as he openly disclosed that there was a safe. I mean, Budworth was right. How on earth would I know there was a safe unless he told me there was one? Iqbal also slipped through the trial. The judge made no remark, no direction to the jury about his inconsistent evidence, the sworn statement that said something completely different. Let's concentrate on Iqbal for a minute. The thing that I plucked out of Iqbal's evidence was something that was summed up by Recorder Moore in page 358 of her summing up. Quote, Mr. Iqbal had no notes of what he was given by Darren and recollected giving the paperwork only a cursory flick through, unquote. Now, Budworth, you remember, advanced the question of how much time he'd attributed to this cursory flick through and also how much legal aid he'd charged. You'll remember, and we have the verbatim transcript of the evidence. Iqbal's sworn oath was that he charged nothing. Such was the minuscule flick through some papers that he had previously denied ever seeing. I contacted the Information Governance at the Legal Aid Board and submitted a subject access request, sometimes referred to as a SAR for short. Now, this was a very important tool I'd stumbled across because it would usually give me access to information that I would be otherwise unaware of. This would give me access to all of my information, including but not limited to the legal costs for my fraud case and the itemised billing by the lawyers. That's where I was focusing in on. This point about him not charging for this cursory flick through some papers, my financial papers. I'd also get to see any notes accompanying any fee requests, so any applications that Iqbal had made for any fees, if there were any. And remember, here's a long shot. I mean, he hadn't given the whole truth once, so that suggests he may not have given the whole truth throughout, but I didn't have it at this point, and maybe I'd never get it. Anyway, as ever, I continued on, trusting my instinct, following up every lead. Some worked, and some worked with absolute incredible results, unbelievable results. Others didn't. But nevertheless, you have to chase every single thing to the nth degree. I paid a fee of about £10 and waited the maximum then of 30 days in which to receive the requested information. The clock began to tick. I then went to Derek and asked if he'd set up a limited company for me. Now, Derek mentioned that as I'd been convicted of fraud, I firstly needed to double-check whether I'd been disqualified from being a company director, which was sometimes usual in these fraud cases. Derek checked the company's house records and he couldn't find anything there, so I thought to contact the clerk at Norwich Crown Court. I did just that. Telephoned Mr. Jim Webster, the court clerk, the usher, you'll remember, who swapped my indictment. I asked him if he knew anything about this, and he remembered my trial. His memory was excellent. He almost knew it as well as I had. and yet he'd been through many cases. I also asked Jim about the indictment and the changes that were made prior to Recorder Moore summing up. Now, he said that he'd double-check and write to me. I received that letter on the 12th of April, 2013, quote, "Further to our telephone conversation this morning, I can confirm that no company director's disqualification order was made at the conclusion of your case. I've checked with both Recorder Moore and the Crown Prosecution Service," unquote. And this meant that I was able to continue to set up companies and continue with business as usual. Well, almost usual. The building industry wouldn't be such an interesting place to revisit because the police had made the most of their press release about the dodgy builder. Anyway, I was partly in the game. I was able to form a limited company and get my feet back on the pavement. I'll continue on in the same letter. Quote, "As regards indictments, I enclose a copy of the original joinder indictment endorsed by myself in the capacity of court clerk on the 24th of October 2011 by order of Recorder Moore to form the trial indictment," unquote. Now, as I looked at these indictments, I could see clearly that I'd been right all along. Well, I remember prosecution, the Crown had let me off with over £630,000 worth of pocker for fear that I would bring this evidence to them in an appeal in my pocker case. I already had it. But sometimes even when you're looking at the evidence, it's glaring in front of you, it's hard to believe that it's there. Because we all trust these people. Police, barristers, judges. We have to check ourselves when we know that the cases against us are wrong. Because we're very lucky, almost lottery-like, to find anything as they bury it so well. And then close the doors behind them. I then received a second letter from Jim. He attached the proposed jury bundle, which included the count numbers against the complainants' names, and a further copy of the indictments referred to his letter under the chronology tab. Couldn't believe it. I hadn't seen these documents before. The chronology. Again, I could see why they removed the chronology document. Remember, Recorder Moore, quote, summing up an important document. Well, it would be. It basically would have given the jury a means of cross-referencing any questions they had in their mind of confusion as to what count was what. By swapping the indictments around and changing the names against the count numbers when the recorder is summing up and saying, count 1, here's the evidence, they're looking down and seeing Bushra and Nazir, count 4, etc., etc. He went on in this new letter. Quote, "Dear Darren, further to our last telephone conversation concerning the indictments in your case, chronology, 16th of April 2010, 5-count indictment signed by Isleworth Crown Court, see copy A attached. June 14th, 2011, 2-count indictment, 2 further counts of fraud against Michael Craig and Michael Lew, signed by Norwich Crown Court, see copy B attached. 24th of October, 2011, above indictments joined with the leave of Miss Recorder Moore to form a 7-count joinder indictment for trial, see copy C attached. The copy of the 7-count referred to in Annex 3 of the prosecution bundle differs from the authorised indictment of Miss Recorder Moore, in that the counts appear to be in a different order. See copy D attached. I'm still reading from his letter. It should be noted that this has not been signed or sealed by the Crown Court, and its origins appear unknown. You said that at some point during the trial, Miss Recorder Moore, copies of the trial indictment be collected and replaced. Looking at the court log, I note that on the 10th of November 2011, during the trial, counts 1 and 2 of the indictment were removed and replaced with counts 6 and 7. On the 19th of January 2012, the court log noted, prosecution counsel addresses judge, amended jury bundle now available. Miss Recorder Moore summed up the case on the 30th of January 2012. I cannot tell which version of the indictment Miss Recorder Moore referred to in her summing up. I'm sorry that it's taken so long to research and compile, and I appreciate that in terms of issues that you wish to raise, it's not entirely helpful. I have done my best to assist while dealing with more current matters." Unquote. There it is. The court clerk provided me with evidence that even he couldn't tell which indictment was being used. Now, this had the potential to be another ground for appeal, but this time in my criminal conviction. You imagine, judge's summing up begins by starting with the case and the evidence, and then she starts mentioning and referring to the original trial indictment that the 17-week trial had been based on. The difficulty was the jury had been handed a new indictment. Now let me slow down. That is right. The judge was approached by prosecution counsel, Mr. Christopher Stimpson of Hare Court Chambers. He changed the indictment swapped it all round, handed it to the judge. The judge asked Mr. Webster, the guy I've just been speaking about, to remove the original indictments out of the jury bundles and replace them with this new amended indictment that completely rearranged the counts and the numbers. The judge then asked Mr. Webster to remove all of the chronology documents. An important document. Once I referred to the summing up, I could see that Recorder Moore misdirected the jury because she was directing the case in her summing up on the original indictment, but the jurors are reading the amended indictment, for which did not correlate with the original indictment. Absent of the chronology document, they had no way of checking. This evidence was an intent by the Crown to corrupt this case and obtain a conviction against me. Come what may, corruption, Mr. Stimson. Recorder Moore. Again, come and see me. You know it's right. You won't come and see me, but there it is. And I won't keep doing this because it's just fun for me when there's little fun in being convicted wrongly. And the previous issues with my brother's case were a member of a juror related to prosecution counsel and sharing a room with the junior. It was all too much. This was a higher power. Operation Westminster, the top of the British government, led by so many people. David Bright, his police friends, remember, Lord Stevens, Sir Ian Blair, commissioners of the Met Police, barristers, judges, all in this story, all answerable if they want. I have the evidence. Remember, this book is focused purely on the evidence to back it. I'm excited, but believe me, I'm nowhere near where I got to. In the end, I had the internet obviously access at that time, so I found a building surveyor, expert witness. I thought to ask him about the questions of one of the other complainants, victims now, Michael Craig, who, along with his wife, Chantel van den Elshoot, a very high-profile interior designer, still around today. Check her out. Call her. Mention my podcast. They lied about a beam in the ceiling, structural beam. They said they had no idea what a beam or a pier means. That wasn't true, which I later found. I knew it. I needed to evidence it. I went back to see Derek. Business is on the cards. I need some money. I need to get going again. As I sat with Derek in his little office out in Surrey, his accountancy office, little tiny room at the bank, he said to me, look, he said, you've got some contacts, he said, and there's some influential people, in all walks of life, he said. I met with a few people, he said, been introduced to me through my lodge. And a friend of mine, Salman Khan, he's a property developer. And, between us, we've had a meeting and they want to sell some commodities. Oil, sugar, energy, gold, coal. Okay, I said, well, most of that I haven't dealt with before. I said, but if it's a point of introduction, then I may be able to help. I've got some very helpful LinkedIn contacts, if you want them. And he's looking at me and saying, no, I want your personal contacts. I did no more, but reached out through LinkedIn to an interior designer. I started on the property. That's what I knew most. Because one of the things that they were looking to broker was Peruvian Wharf in Canary Wharf, a section of the foreshore that they wanted to develop into a 500-room hotel. So I connected with George Bond, an interior designer based in Newcastle. We, to arrange interiors, refurbishments, and this potential construction project. Now, George, by all accounts, had a great social circle and friends to match. I could see him from his LinkedIn profile. When speaking with him, I soon gathered that he was once the talk of the town. Unfortunately for him, or fortunately, I must be given some credit for it, a huge amount of credit for it. He stopped his practice, or slowed down his practice, as he was advancing to look after and nurse his partner, called Brian, who had been suffering in relative silence for far too long. ... George. Soon, Derek called me and asked that I join him and Salman at the office to discuss this new project. And then once I sat down, I had a cup of coffee. Salman said, look, do you know anyone in the oil business? Or at least someone to reach out to? I thought, look, I've got George. He's a good contact. He's new. He's fresh. He's on the card so far. And I had no one else to deal with oil. Who can deal with oil? No one can deal with oil. It's all controlled, isn't it? Oil? Brokering oil? No. Well, anyway, I thought, let's listen to what he's got to say. I sent him a message on the 5th of August 2013. I had a response. Quote, hi Darren. I've passed this information on to a lady called Princess Katerina. She works a lot in this kind of industry and she's quite high-powered, unquote. Before long, HRH, Her Royal Highness Princess Katerina of Yugoslavia, had sent me an email. Quote, Dear Darren, George Bond has been very kind to pass this matter on to me. I'm setting up a small company for infrastructure projects and introductions. I do work with a company regarding oil and other company regarding power and energy projects. You're very welcome to be in touch with me. If you're in London, it will be good to meet. With kind regards, Princess Katerina. Unquote. HRH, Princess Katerina of Yugoslavia, or Lady de Silva. She's a member of the royal family. Then, 100th in line to the throne, husband was Sir Desmond de Silva, QC, some say the founder of The Hague. And then she was born in London to Princess Margarita of Baden and Prince Tomislav of Yugoslavia. Now, whilst her father's dynasty had been disposed of and banished from Yugoslavia after World War II, she grew up in exile, largely in England. She had one brother, Prince Nicola of Yugoslavia, and two half-brothers, Prince George and Prince Michael. You can look her up. Member of the royal family, hugely connected. So I agreed to meet with her. Very lucky to meet with her. I've never met a Royal Highness before. Wondered what to do, to say, to bow, to nod, to crouch, to whichever. Derek said, look, just follow her lead. He'd mixed in these circles at the lodges and other events he'd been to. Now, Derek was a very high-powered Freemason. He made no bones about it. There are some Freemasons I've met that speak and sing of the fact that they're a Freemason from the rooftops, through the loudspeakers. Some were private, but Derek was one of those that just loved to tell the world he was a Freemason. He would say to me, I'm a Knights Templar Freemason, Rose Croix, I'm an ordained monk and a beekeeper. I sat down at Marouche, a Lebanese restaurant in Earl's Court, close by the underground station. And in she came, Her Royal Highness Princess Katerina of Yugoslavia. And we chatted, and I found that she was a very down-to-earth person. Not the sort of person you think of as a royal, even though you could tell she had impeccable breeding and manners. And she was charming and insensitive. She was a very nice, decent person, down to a level that I could relate to. We got on, and we discussed these business projects that Derek and his cronies would put forward, the oil and this and that. She got excited. She got very excited. The reason she got very excited was because she divorced from Desmond de Silva, her husband, and I won't go into the private details, but she was looking for new adventures, let's say that. She had a brochure of a property in Sussex that she wanted to move to and entertain her international friends. That was her focus. We kept meeting, and after a while, became friends, I would say. I think she would say the same. We became such good friends after a very short period of time that I was soon invited to her home, and that of her daughter, Victoria, who was named after her great-grandmother, Her Royal Highness Queen Victoria. And before much longer, we both sat drinking Turkish coffee and nibbling on Brazil nuts, talking about her planned new home. Now, it was a great experience, meeting with someone like this and interacting with someone on a level, a friendly level. And she really was interested in business. And she could, remember, she's a member of the royal family. She could call on anything. She said to me, look, can you drop the formalities and call me Katerina? And this was a huge relief, because the only person I ever felt comfortable calling princess was my little daughter, B. I told her the interesting story of Salman's. Quote, a close friend had attended a hunting party with one of the Middle Eastern royal families. Unquote. Salman had called his contacts, quote, the Saudi prince, unquote, and he'd implied his offering of, quote, off-market oil deals, unquote. And he was looking for a refinery for his crude oil supplies. Now I thought, as much as I don't know much about oil was controlled. Oh, it's obvious, isn't it? And here we got this friend of Derek. Now, Derek, remember he stood up, he's tried to avoid capture, didn't want to give evidence against me. He got a lot goes for that, There's nothing to say about me, but the fact that he behaved like that puts him in good stead. He's a Freemason, nothing wrong with Freemasons. They do their thing, they're living in secret, fair play. I had to take him seriously, or as serious as I could. Nevertheless, look, I mentioned this to Katerina, and she said I'll speak to one of my contacts and revert. Anyway, a short time later, I was invited by Katerina to meet one of her contacts who had just flown in from the USA for this exact meeting. His name was Mr. William C. Morris, the oil tycoon of Dallas, Texas, and he was sitting there at this meeting along with Michael Wynne Parker, a royal connector, at his club, his private members club, the Cavalry and Guards Club at 127 Piccadilly. we all decided to tell Selman's story. After telling the story, William, as he'd like to be called, said, look, I've heard of this scenario about 3 or 4 times before, and 2 of those times the story seemed even more credible than yours, and nothing happened. The 3rd time, with less credibility than that of yours, turned out to be an interesting option. Let's meet with Salman. We left the club. I made a few calls, arranged for William to meet with Salman and his contacts in the boardroom at number 23 Berkeley Square in Mayfair. In the meantime, Katerina and I continued to meet and discuss various property and interiors matters, which eventually turned into a meeting, and my first in person, with George as he'd come down from Newcastle. We'd met at the luxurious Fleming's Hotel on Half Moon Street in Mayfair for filming of a short piece of my new limited company called Opulent Interiors. Now, if you type in Katerina and George Bond and Opulent Interiors, you'll see the video that sits there even today. Not therefore, there it is, you'll see it. I arrived at Fleming's first and I met with the general manager, Mr. Oliver J.Q. Brown, as he liked to be known. His staff were all quite flustered, as if Her Majesty the Queen herself was to come in. Now look, it was fascinating for me to see how these staff of luxury hotels prepared the hotel to receive a member of the royal family. I could sense their nervousness at the prospect of not having one thing out of place. And that's impeccable order, I thought. And that is how you should treat people. Certainly these members of the royal family. And others. Everyone, in fact. We should all be treated with respect. Katerina arrived in her usual way, immaculate, unassuming, dignified nod to the front of house as she tripped up into the steps and the entrance where the door was open for her. The general manager bowed, lightly took her hand, gently shaking it as many times as appropriate, before bowing again and addressing her in her full title as HRH. Quote, I and all my staff are here at your pleasure, unquote, he added, before leading us through to the formal reception room. We had a great meeting. The video, there it is. And Katerina decided to introduce me to more of her business partners, her business associates. One of them was named Anthony Richards, a black guy, living out of Romford, which is bizarre, but not because he's black and not because he lives in Romford, but how normal people like me and Anthony would be meeting these royal individuals and others. I met him on a few occasions. He just seemed a bit flaky, as if he was around her to collect the business cards of the people that she was introducing him to. I sensed that. It was about right as well. I just couldn't understand why she had him around, although I'm sure she entertained a lot of support. Anyway, Anthony introduced me to Mr. Henry A. Goldstein, FCA, chartered accountant and senior partner of the firm Morris J. Bushell & Co., based in Moorgate in the City of London. I went to see him and Henry said he was the business advisor of Katerina, as was Anthony, and she had thought to tell them without firstly asking to engage them. Now what happened was Katerina got overexcited and told Anthony and Henry of Salman's oil deal, who also wanted a piece of the action, a share, introducer's fee, whatever it may be. I mentioned to Henry and Anthony to call off whilst we understood what this was all about. But no, they were, like Katerina, overly excited. I then thought to inquire and do some due diligence on all this. And I asked Salman to introduce me to someone who was a little higher up in this chain. He took me to meet a friend called Malik at his office in the Regis building at Berkeley Square, Mayfair. When meeting Malik, close to the glass Mayfair boardroom, Malik said, or demanded, he told Salman, look, stay over there. He said, I thought it was strange, I thought they were friends, you know what I mean? But as he opened the boardroom door, he went, oh, please come in. Darren, he said, you can stay out there. Like that, which Salman looked a bit pissed with. Come in, Darren, he said, have a seat, would you like a coffee? I said, yeah, why not? Anyway, as we started talking, he said, oh, I'd be very grateful to meet with your contacts. Which contacts? I said to him. Well, as many as you allow me. I hear you're well connected in London and even overseas. Look, I said, what might my contacts be interested in with you, Malik? I said, look, with respect, of course. Come with me, Darren. He said, look, let's go upstairs. And with that, we left the boardroom, up an escalator and via the labyrinth of corridors into an office, which was about 3 or 4 small round desks and tables and chairs. And as I entered, I introduced to a young, slim, Middle Eastern guy, sitting right at the back in the corner. He was dressed casually, but they were expensive clothes, you could tell. Mohammed, please meet Darren. I shook his hand and as he got up from his seat, and then Malik said, come and sit next to me here. As I sat down, Malik turned to his computer, logged in, displaying a dashboard, a banking app. Malik, whose first name is also Mohammed, noticed my glance, said, look, Darren, he said, you'll see the number £400 million in the account of cleared funds. You'll also see 2 sets of 40 million that are currently allotted to our clients. Look, Darren, if you or any one of your contacts require funding or proof of funds in an MT760, then please ask them to come and see me and I'll facilitate it. I usually charge a fee of about 5% if only wanting proof of funds up to 2 million and 2.5% for any amount over that which I can facilitate. I'll happily share any remuneration with you. No, I'd never dealt with an MT760. He was talking to me about it as if it was a loaf of bread. So I inquired, and an MT760 is a message used for issuing or requesting a letter of credit, both a type of interbank message that are used on a SWIFT system so that financial institutions can correspond. Now, I hadn't been offered 40 million or 400 million in the past, as you can probably hear, so my reply was simple. Thanks, Malik. And he looked at me and looked at the other Mohammed twice and shocked, as if I'd some way belittled their offer. He came back round and said, look, I apologise about that. How about I give your friends 2% up to 2 and only 1%? I said, look, I'm interested. I said, of course I'm interested. Just give me a line of credit for 40 million or more. I'm just trying to think who I might want to borrow for 40 or 400 million a day, that's all. And laughed. And after a little pause, so did Malik and Mohammed. Look, I'll come back to you and thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Now, as I was about to leave, Malik said to me, look, I've got an Audi sitting outside this office with diplomatic ghost plates. Now, I thought to myself, all right, I've been introduced here. I've got every wrong'un in this fucking country on my back. And I've got this guy offering me millions of pounds, never met me before. Wants to put me in a car outside with ghost plates. Effectively a embassy on fucking wheels that can't be touched. Now, I don't know what's in this car. I don't know whether I'm going to fucking get out of this car. So I said, no thanks. So we arranged another meeting, this time in another boardroom in Regis. Katerina was excited, Malik was excited, licking his lips at the prospect. Henry was sitting in his office in Moorgate, all excited. My phone's buzzing, George Bond on the other end, trying to get his cut. And I continued to feel uneasy. And I can tell you it wasn't the boardroom tea or the hobnob biscuits. I felt uneasy. My intuition was not on this thing, right? I felt like the patsy. I felt like someone was going to fucking stick me up for something that I couldn't deal with. I would have dealt with it, but it would have been after some fucking heavy loss. I decided to go and meet with Henry again. I hadn't spent too much time with him, so I thought I'd go and see him, see what he's thinking about. I said, look, Henry, look, you're dealing with the royal family. You got this oil deal, you got all these cronies, you got J.R. Ewing, the fucking real one, flying in from Texas. This guy's on the board of ADNOC, KNOC, Aramco, fucking, he was the chairman of the All-American Oil and Gas Company, so his business card said. Yeah, that's right, proper fucking oil baron. They're all proper people, on the face of it. Anyway, I said, look, Henry, let's go and see a lawyer. Because what's being said to me is they want to broker this oil deal, and you've got some people that want to earn from it by introduction that are known, and there's some people that are introducing that's unknown. And I don't want to fucking get caught up with any fucking nonsense with the unknowns. They might be terrorists, they might be all sorts of fucking strange people. No, he said, you're fucking overlooking it, you're overcooking it. You know what I mean? He said, let's just do this. He said, 3 million fucking barrels of oil a month. He said, you know how much you can fucking make? He said, you never work again. He said, you live in fucking Monaco. I said, I don't live in fucking Monaco. Monaco's a beautiful place, I'm sure. I'm a Londoner. We joked. I said, look, let's go and see a proper lawyer. If you can convince me there's nothing wrong in it, or he can tell me there's nothing wrong in it, even though I don't trust fucking lawyers, let's go and have a chat with someone. Anyway, he said, all right, fuck it, let's go and do it. So we went, he arranged it to meet with a lawyer. The lawyer was a proper, lecturer on the Bribery Act and these other Bribery Acts. How did that get involved? Bribery Acts? Fucking only introducing people and explained about these potential introductions, with fees for introductions of the knowns and the unknowns. And he convinced me that this was fucking wrong. So I said to him, look, this is wrong. I'm not getting involved. I'm definitely not going to tell Katerina. You advise Katerina. Anthony advises Katerina. And you have done for however long you've done it. I'm new to the frame. I said, but if she's asking for my blessing, which I doubt she will, then I'm not going to give it to her. Look, it's no secret. Henry was proper pissed at this. He could see himself retiring. But I couldn't allow Katerina to get waded in with this nonsense. Remember, I trusted this lawyer's view. He's a senior lawyer, knew his stuff. Right? I'm not going to allow this to go down. I turned around to Henry and said, look, Henry, I'm not going to have it. I'm going to tell Katerina it's no good and I'm going to advise her to steer clear of it. I don't care what you think or what anyone else thinks. I've got a duty in looking after this woman. You know what I mean? She's a bit vulnerable. She's just had a divorce. She hasn't got a lot out of it. Whatever, whatever. Even if she got millions and trillions out of it, I'll still be fucking doing the same thing. He was out fucking, what are we going to do? I can't have this. Oh, no. So you're having it. I said, look, if you want to convince her to have it, then she's got to make her own mind up. But I'm not going to convince her of anything. I'm just going to tell her that straight. The thing is, Derek, Henry, all Masons, Now, that's nothing wrong with that, as I said. And even if they weren't Masons, it was just businessmen. They'd be pissed. I get that. They'd put up a deal. Deal was no good, as far as I was concerned, and the lawyer. And we're protecting Katerina, and you imagine the embarrassment to the British royal family. So, look, whatever fucking party establishment's against me, at the end of the day, I've got to look after the fucking firm, innit? Derek then sent me an email on the 23rd of July 2014. This deal has just been blown out of the water, unquote. Now, what I didn't know about that time was that such was Derek's upset that he met with Katerina behind my back and told her of my fraud conviction. I hadn't told her. He'd conveniently forgotten, of course, to mention his own conviction for ABH, but nevertheless, this news had unsettled Katerina. I get that. She couldn't be around fraud. It's just bad. It's just the same as being around fucking bad oil deal, wasn't it, really? Which was a shame, because I was looking out for her. But I understand. No grudges, no. At the end of the day, I felt whatever relationship I'd lost in Katerina, ultimately, I'd fucking done my best to protect her. And that's, I could live with that. I returned home that day, and waiting for me was a large letter. I couldn't fucking believe what was inside. I mean, it wasn't the fucking Q250 water treatment and everything else I'm going to get into later that Alan had sent me in jail. But it was just as important to me. In that document was the response to my subject access request on Mr. Iqbal and that cursory review of my papers. Do you remember it? And Budworth's reference and examination of Iqbal, asking him how much he claimed in legal aid. And he said, oh, nothing, it was just a flick through, you remember? Sitting in front of me are the documents from the Legal Aid Board, where after my trial had ended on the 24th of January 2013, now remember I put a lot of detail in this, dates, times, addresses, people, with some names, change others. You'll know why I do that. It's very difficult to unpick if I'm nailing the dates and the times and backing it with the evidence. Anyway, in this evidence, Iqbal had claimed £3,172.79. Now, surely that's an amount that doesn't accord with a cursory flick through. In any event, he said he didn't charge anything, so what's the £3,172 doing there anyway? I had him perjury, but I thought to move on. A minnow in this story. But important to touch on it because of what happened next. Because you'll remember that Iqbal also introduced me to a Tim Concannon to look at magnet papers, remember the magnet claim, and my family matters and other things. And he introduced me to Tim Concannon, was a barrister at Guildhall Chambers in Portsmouth. Now I'd also, with this amount of luck, with this subject access request, very good thing is, sent one to Guildhall Chambers, Portsmouth, and waited for their reply. My tag had been removed, and I thought, right, I'm going to look for a relationship or a date, at least. And what else was intriguing me was to create a community of trusted people. So many fucking idiots out there. I thought back to Liam walking across the cricket pitch. Now, Liam was the founder of the F Troop, the Bushwhackers, basically Millwall's firm. So when I say that he and I didn't get on West Ham, perhaps I hadn't exaggerated it before, but that's him. He fucking, when he was staying with me in my pad, who fucking used to complain about his fucking book, F Troop, fucking got written, he's fucking screaming about it. He said, oh shit. He was the top boy there. He was their fucking number one. And we were together. They couldn't believe it in jail. But then, remember, I had been working in the fucking pharmacy, so I could use the back. But that, two people that shouldn't be interacting, did, had a common goal, benefit, and it worked. It was that kind of mantra that I was, and other fucking idiots like Derek and Emery and fucking all this ticking along with their own ill-gotten gains fucking in their front of their mind, that made me think, I want to put this community together. I want to put a little fucking club together. You remember as well, going back to the California, hosting fucking events for the fucking Rangers against Celtic. You know, people wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that in the fucking Blenheim Palace. They certainly wouldn't fucking do it in a strip club, a nightclub in East London. These are the reasons. This is what stemmed my thoughts to creating a club. And while this is all going on, I thought, look, there's that Q250, that water treatment. I said it, and I thought, look, I've got all these documents, got all these letters, got these statements from Alan, I've got fucking court transcripts on the Katurian and Ismail, fucking... Anyway, I thought, I've got to nail this one. Is this a load of shit or is it? So look, I thought, let me go down and arrange a meeting with the CEAG University of Surrey. I contacted Surrey University and was introduced to a Dr. Sabia K. Uki Ding, MSc, PhD. I went to see her. She knew all about the Q250. Now, the Q250 water treatment was tested at the University of Surrey in their little pond, firstly. She told me all about it. She was walking me around the tour of the university. And then went on to say, well, after the tests were completed there, we thought to test the product in Africa. The thing with the Q250, it was portable water treatment. It was chemicals. So instead of carting around fucking lorries full of water, I just need to cart around lorries full of chemicals and then mix them depending on the level of contamination of the water after carrying out a test, blah, blah, blah. She put me in touch with Professor John Clark, who had been working on this project throughout. I contacted him, referred to the names, Alan, Robin, and the American microbiologist at the NSA and CIA, who had allegedly developed this product during the Cold War. Now, Professor Clark was in communication with all these people. He confirmed the story. It's true. But that meant that the other papers that Alan had sent me were also fucking true. And that was a fucking dangerous prospect. I'd been trusted to deal with a global water treatment. Now, don't say that lightly. This fucking water treatment, look at the credentials, created by a microbiologist, ex-US Ranger, CIA, NSA, Homeland Security, fucking operative, with people involved with MI6, tested at Portadown. They had a water treatment that could solve the world's purification and water problems. They're sitting on this. Now they're trusting it with me. Alan asked that I go back to contact some of his people at HMRC. Yes, that's right, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. Now I'm aware of what I've got in my hands. I'm not mentioning some of it now. I may touch on a bit more of it later. It's fucking dangerous. Certainly the people involved are. And we're talking governments now. We're not talking fucking coppers and fucking firms and gangsters. We're talking about fucking nations, fucking information. And I just thought this level of trust, they trusted me with this stuff. They would never trust me to fucking trip me up. They can trip me up on fucking thousands of different things. Fucking this, they wouldn't want this. So anyway, I thought, fuck it, I'm going to go and look back at this LinkedIn. I'm going to fucking see who I've got. Another barrister. I found a senior clerk called Stuart Gibbs, who was the senior clerk at 4 Pump Court Chambers. He'd been introduced to me by Doug James, who was the joint owner of Thrive Unlimited, a branding and marketing agency called Honey Creative, based in London. Now, Doug is a serial chatterbox, you may say, you know the feeling, and an entrepreneur. And he likes to introduce, I understand what it's like being an entrepreneur. Your mind's racing, you've got too many things going on at the same time. Nailing one down is usually a problem. The way I understand introductions is this. You introduce me to someone and they're no good. The person that introduces them, not the person who's no good, should be fucked off. Because too many people are throwing around introductions. Oh, I meet them. No real due diligence, no fucking interest. All goes wrong, tits out, walk away. I didn't know. Well, down to me. Now, I had no idea of Doug's introduction capabilities and thought that he talked a good job. I had no evidence otherwise. So he introduced me to his colleague, commercial director, Miss Lulu Laidlaw-Smith. Now I'd been invited to the Tesco's annual event in Battersea Park for a 1,000-seated dinner, their end of year, knees up. So I thought, well, look, I'll fucking go and meet Lulu and see if I can create some business first. Now, Lulu invited me to meet with her at Soho House in Greek Street in May 2014. Now, I had no idea how commercial she was, but the tone of her email suggested she was, and she was sounded genuine, so I thought, this is great. I accepted a meeting, went down to Greek Street, up into the club, and then I saw her sitting there, thick, long blonde hair, down to her bum. Slim, posh, plummy posh fucking accent. Banter, flirty. Go on, I do need a date. Now, should we hit it off? I made sure of it. And I invited her to the event, the gala at Evolution in Battersea Park, Queenstown Road, SW8. Now, we had fucking, I'll never forget it, the comedian there, you might suspect, but it was Michael McIntyre. Now, when he started, brilliant, he was fucking unbelievably good. He was fucking bantering the hosts with the positives of their rivals' delivery services. Now, whilst the executives of Tesco sitting there beginning, by about 10 minutes time, they fucking got to drag him off the stage. He had got it wrong. But such is the fucking mastering skills of this comedian, right? I watched him turn the fucking thing around. He almost got a nudge, just like a slap in the face when someone made him aware of how he was fucking it up. And honestly, he's turned that round to fucking as if he'd planned it. Absolute fucking brilliant. Couldn't believe it. It's excellent. You gotta see it, believe it. So good. Funny fucker. And talented like you wouldn't believe. Anyway, so we went there, we had dinner, we chatted and this and that, and we flirted and fucking whatever. And we then, sitting out in the foyer just about to leave. And there were people walking past us saying, oh, hey, why aren't you going in at the disco? And blah, blah, blah. This and the other. I said, look, fucking they're playing with a few too many Tom Jones songs for me. You know what I mean? I don't mind a bit of Tom Jones, but fucking hell, it's every song. It is fucking Tom Jones. He's fucking standing on the stage singing. I'll never forget that. Funny thing, I didn't see him. I was fucking right at the back of the fucking hall. Anyway, I was dropped off to Wimbledon and she went on to her home in Twickenham. Now, Lulu and I were almost inseparable after that. We met with her partner, Matthew Perkins Webb, and another director of Honey, Greg Wallace, and other people in her group. And Lulu and I connected on a level where she wanted her company, A Cappella, she called it, to create platforms. Now, I knew nothing of platforms then. I wanted to create a community of trusted people. She knew about platforms. This was another thing other than the long blonde hair that I was fucking interested in. Now, a short while, about a month after we started dating, I was invited into her home in Pope's Grove in Twickenham. We continued the relationship. She had 2 daughters, adorable, and an Australian live-in nanny named Erin. 4-bedroom home, no partner. I thought, fucking strange, he gone? Fucking leave her, she's fucking sweet. She asked me to move in, and I was in deeper than I'd imagined. It was only a short time after that Lulu had explained that her husband had left once knowing of our relationship. I don't give a fuck about relationships, right? But this one didn't sit right with me. Because this was one that was being told me that the guy left because of me, whereas normally it's because of the woman. Although Lulu and I were finding deeper feelings, it didn't make me out. It didn't fucking sit right. It was done, but it didn't sit right. It didn't change anything. I remember being honest with you. You know, you probably think, what a fucking cunt, you know what I mean, doing that. I didn't know. The thing is, you're probably right. I didn't care. I was fucking doing what I like. People are making decisions. It's their choice. I'm there. That's my choice. The world goes round. We had great family times together. We went out to stay with her mother and her new partner, and we visited Lulu's home where she lived as a child. Now, this was no fucking terraced house. This was fucking Ford Abbey in Somerset. She grew up in a fucking stately home. What she didn't tell me was her mum was the cleaner and she divorced a commoner husband, according to Lulu. Perhaps that's why she liked me, a fucking commoner. I don't know. But anyway, and they later was restricted from the family inheritance because the mother married a commoner or whatever. So the story went. It was funny, you know, right? As we were walking around this Ford Abbey, Lulu said, quick, in here. She'd push a fucking panel in the wall and the door would swing open. She'd run in the back. We'd go to the back of these fucking rooms and pop out into a terrace looking down onto the visitors. Then we went to sit outside the coffee shop and then she told me of her grandfather, John Shedden, who, according to her, was the first winner of the badminton horse trials in 1949. She also told me of the bullying she suffered while she was at boarding school and she was just 6 years old. 6 years old at boarding school. Fucking awful. It made me think of how B might be bullied and how any of those bullies would fucking suffer if I found out. We became very close. And when I told her of my conviction, her mother intervened, made life very difficult for her. And I felt sorry for Lulu, so I decided to introduce her to one of my contacts who I'd met with in Mayfair. And he was the ex-founder of Quintessentially, the director of their Q Travel, actually. He was the director of that element of the business, the travel, luxury private travel. His name was Jeremy Sutton. And he had an abundance of luxury hotel contacts, high net worth contacts. Now, Honey had only just completed a brand strategy for a luxury hotel in London, so I thought to introduce him to Jeremy and discuss their business interests. We set a date to meet at our home in Pope's Grove on the 9th of September 2014 and discuss this potential club that I was thinking about. And then afterwards, Jeremy to discuss his interest in Lulu's business and the branding. It sounded like a great relationship or a series of relationships. Now, in preparation for our planned meeting, Greg Wallace at Honey Creative had invited me to his private members club in Portland Place in London, named Home House. Now, this experience of a physical luxury private club was very appealing. It's lovely. It's elaborate. It looked beautiful. It felt right. I asked him about membership and, along with a written statement from Henry Goldstein, who was now my proposed accountant, as he'd forgotten about the oil deal, or so I thought, and a vote of confidence from Greg, who was a member, then I became a member of Home House. It was what happened next, just as things were starting to click into place, that snapped me back out, as was often the case. After membership was approved at Home House, I arrived home earlier than planned. Basically, the afternoon before the meeting was to be happening with Jeremy Sutton and Honey Creative. I went straight into the bedroom to change out of my business suit. I saw Lulu's iPad on the bed and I could hear the bath running. I looked at the open email on the 4th of September 2014 between Lulu and her close friend Steve Kelsey, who was a previous director of PI Global. As I was focused in on the heading, the subject, it said White Witch. White Witch? Fuck's sake. Picked up the device for a closer look and read the message from Lulu to Steve. Quote, not sure what to do. I just want to give you the heads up. Listen in to each episode as I engage you in my personal journey of how a boy growing up on a council estate in Essex would eventually own the most exclusive online private members club in the world.